let's demo this thing. Okay, spin up a MySQL. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna spin up a MySQL Docker container. Okay, and we're gonna create a table with myISIN, and we're gonna create another table with AnoDB, because you can do that. You can have two tables with different storage engines because MySQL is awesome. Okay, and you can connect the database with JavaScript, right? That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna connect it with JavaScript, and I made a video just specific of that. I'm gonna release it before this video goes out, so you guys can see how you can connect from JavaScript, from Node.js to a MySQL, and you will be surprised how easy this thing is, right? Okay, once you know MySQL, by default, you know MariaDB. By default, you know Persona. See how transactions behave. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna see, since myASIN doesn't support transaction, I'm gonna show you how transactions behave in myASIN versus AnoDB. So we're gonna do about that. Let's just jump into it. All right, guys. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna spin up a MySQL Docker container. Because why I keep using Docker? Because your laptop is precious. You don't want to install garbage on top of your laptop or your machine if you want to test something and you're gonna destroy it later. Use Docker if you want to test. Spin up a Docker container that you have your database on. If you're done, stop and remove that container. You're done. You don't have to uninstall and install and configure and you don't have to do all the garbage. That's why I use Docker a lot. And you need Docker, obviously, to do this tutorial. If you can do Docker run hello world successfully, whether you are on Windows or whether you're on Mac or whether you're on Linux, you're good to do this tutorial. So there's no intricacies of the actual platform. I just isolated that stuff. You have Docker, you can do this tutorial. Full stop. Okay. So once you do hello from Docker, you're good to go, guys. Right. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna spin up a MySQL database. And how do we do that? It's very simple. Okay. To do a MySQL database, you can do this. Docker run -- name, and you give it a name, right? Always give your container a name. Okay. And I'm gonna call it MS, MySQL. Okay. I think this might exist, so I'm gonna call it MySQL 1. Because I'm not sure if it exists or not. And the next thing is I want to expose the port. The default port of MySQL is 3306. Okay. I am exposing 3306. Okay. So this is the internal port. That's the port that I want to expose my computer on. So that's what I connect to when I do Hussein Mac, which is my machine name, okay, or localhost. Next thing, the minimum thing we have to specify is a environment variable -e MySQL root password is called the most secure thing ever, password. My password is called password. Okay, I don't even add 1 2 3 because I'm that confident. Okay, so MySQL root password equal password, and then the final thing is this: you do MySQL, and that by default that will install the latest MySQL, which is I think version 8. Okay, and then yeah, if you're watching this 3 years from now from some reason and this doesn't work, just do this 8, and that will force version 8 to be installed. Okay, or version 5, or whatever version you want. Okay, let's go ahead and spin that up. It's called MS1. So, and let's just we'll spin up and do all that jazz, listening to the port, exposing the port, all that jazz. And next thing, we're gonna go to another terminal. We're gonna connect to this container because we're gonna create a database, right? Because we don't have any of that jazz. We're gonna create a database. We're gonna create 2 tables. One is myASIN, one is Ano. Let's do this. Shell, new tab with profile. And here's the thing, okay? What we're gonna do is we're gonna bash into the container. We're gonna enter the container command line prompt, and we're gonna run MySQL there because guess what? MySQL is existing on MySQL database, right? So here's what I'm gonna do. I don't want to install the client on my machine, all that goofy stuff. So docker execute -it interactive terminal. I want to connect to which container is called MS1, or you can call it anything you want. The moment you do that, I want to execute bash. Because I want to bash into this thing. Bash it. I am there. I'm root now. And the next thing I want to do is I want to run MySQL. I want to actually run the MySQL command line, right? So you do MySQL -u, which user you want to connect to, root, worst idea ever, but sure, it's a tutorial. And then what's the password, -p, and make sure don't add a space after -p. Just immediately write your password, okay? -p password. Doesn't work otherwise. I have no idea why, okay? we're in Oracle owns this thing, okay? And then once we connect, guess what, guys? Well, let's create a database. Create database test, okay? Now I have a database called test. Let's create a table called, well, let's connect to the database, use database test, right? I think it's just use test. All right, sorry. So use test, I'm now in the database. I'm going to create a table. I'm going to call it employees underscore myISM. Yeah, it's just the name of that. But I want this to be in myISM table. So I want to do ID, integer, primary key, and auto increment. Sure, why not? And when I do that, I'm going to give my employee a name, and let's do text. Okay. And then I want the engine to be myISM. That's how you do it. That's how you set by default. If you don't specify that, I think the default engine will be AnoDB. I don't want that. I want the default engine to be myISM. And I forgot the semicolon. And we have created the table. Okay. Another thing I want to show before we create the other tables, you can actually show all the engines that your database supports. If you do show engines, and you can see all the database, all the engines. I support AnoDB. I support myISM. I support this thing, merge myISM. I don't know what's the difference really. It looks like it's a different thing. And if you install RocksDB, you can also get RocksDB here as part of the engine. Okay, you can get CSV if you want to. I don't know why would you do CSV. Actually, there is a good use case for CSV. If you're always exporting stuff to external table, you might just make the storage engine to a CSV and just take that CSV and put it in Excel. That's it, because it's essentially Excel, right? Excel can open CSV file. So there might be a use case for you to make your table storage engine to CSV. How cool design is this? Is part of the software architecture genius, right? That they built this as a separate layer. Okay, so they can just swizzle the engine underneath. Coolish stuff. So I'm gonna create another table, but I'm gonna call it AnoDB. Then we're gonna go there and create a transaction, right? AnoDB, okay? And I'm gonna call the table AnoDB, okay? I don't know what ANO stands for, guys. If someone knows, tell me. Okay. Now we have two tables, employees AnoDB and employees myISM. Okay. So now I can insert stuff if I want to, but I want to go to the actual, so if I do select star from employees myISM, there's nothing. Select star from employees AnoDB. So to us, this is just a table, right? You treat it exactly like just a client doesn't know if it's ISM or no. Well, the client can know if they want to, but the underlying storage is completely different based on how you store stuff. And we're gonna do another video where I can show performance between myISM and AnoDB. I insert like 1 million rows and 1 million rows in AnoDB and 1 million rows in myISM, 1 million rows in myRocks, and compare the performance, what's faster, like 100,000 updates, 100,000 deletes, right? All that stuff. Okay, let's go to Visual Studio Code, write some code against this. How about that? All right, guys, so I'm here in Node.js and Visual Studio Code. Again, guys, I'm going to reference the video that we did, MySQL versus JavaScript, and how do you do that. I'm not going to go through details and how I did that, because I already did that in details in that video, so go check it out if you want to, but I'm going to gloss over these ideas. So I'm going to use the MySQL promise library here, and I'll create a function called connect to myISM. This will insert a row, this essentially will insert a row, but in a transaction. So I'm not going to commit the transaction until I literally say commit, okay? And we're gonna go back to the terminal and see if my table, my row is there or not, okay? Despite I am in a transaction. So let's go and check that. So connect myISM, let's go ahead and call this function. And what it does is it do a try catch, connect to the database, and this is my machine name. You can do localhost as well, same thing exactly. Because some people, some of you guys say like you're having trouble using the host name for some reason. So you can use the local host if it's the same machine, okay? The port 3306, because I'm connected to that. The root is business password, root password, the database test. I'm connected to that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to begin a transaction. Okay. And anything in that thing, if I do a transaction, if I insert into my table, because employees insert, the transaction says the idea of a transaction is if I insert or do deletes, none of those guys can see anything. None of other external clients can see my changes because of the isolation level, right? Ideas, guys, right? Dirty reads and all that stuff, non-committed reads, right? If I do that, nobody can see this thing unless I commit my changes. Even if I commit, there's a little bit of a gray area there because other transaction can have an isolation level of read committed or read non-repeatable reads. If they do non-repeatable reads, even they are committed, they will not be able to see my changes because their changes essentially at the transactional level. But I made a video about ACID. If you're interested to do that, go watch that. I actually more dive deep into more details about isolation and all that jazz. But let's go ahead and do a connection.query. And I'm going to execute this query. Insert into my, it's called employees. And that's the thing. This thing is this case is lowercase, right? Sensitive. MySQL is case sensitive. So I have to do this, my ASM, right? And I want to insert the ID. We don't have to build ID, just name. And the values is, right? Values is nothing. And the name is Hussein, okay? So I'm going to insert a user called Hussein here, okay? And then after I do that, I'm going to do await con.commit. I'm going to commit my transaction here, okay? All right. Let's test this out, guys. I'm going to put a breakpoint here on connecting to my ASM, and I'm going to run this thing. All right, run. And we're about to execute the query. So I'm going to go ahead and execute it. And I just executed the query. Now I inserted Hussein to employees my ISM. Let's go and see. I'm not going to commit yet. So the breakpoint's right there, stuck, right? I didn't commit. So if I go to my ISM, my table, and say select star from employees, my ISM. What? How did that get in? Other clients are seeing my changes. And you know why, guys? Because my ISM does not support transactions. Period. You cannot do begin transaction and you can change your stuff. The moment you start inserting, it's visible everywhere. You're out of luck, man. You cannot. That's it. The moment you do that, whether you like it or not, it's committed. Whether you committed or not, you cannot roll back. There's no roll back on this thing, okay? That's it. You inserted, you're done. Sorry, if you don't want it, do essentially go ahead and turn around and delete it, right? But that's essentially it, because that's the myISM story. Okay, so let's go ahead and do exactly the thing, but connect my AnoDB. Okay, let's do my AnoDB, and I'm exactly gonna use this guy. I'm gonna steal code from here. Because it's the same, if you think about it, it's like the same exact code, right? All right. All right. So this is my function called connect AnoDB, right? Again, I'm gonna put a breakpoint here, and I change this into AnoDB, right? Because that's the table I'm gonna write into. I'm gonna put a breakpoint here. I am calling connect AnoDB. How about we test this thing, guys? Let's see. Now, if I go, let's go here. Select star from employees AnoDB. There is nothing, okay? So what I'm gonna do here is run. All right. I'm gonna begin the transaction. I'm gonna insert Hussein into AnoDB table. I go here and I do select. Guess what? It's not there. Because I did not commit it, despite me. Now, if I stop, let's do this, right? If I do const result rows schema equal con.query, and I do select star from employees AnnoDB, right? Right, we need to do a wait, obviously, guys, and then let's do it. So if I do this query and then give me the rows back, look at that. We have a row and there's Hussein. I did not commit, but within my transaction, I can see my own rows. Okay, I can even print them. Okay, I can see them. I can query them. I can query the changes I make. Guess what? I go back here, select star. It's an empty set. Okay, other clients cannot see my changes. But the moment I commit, I go back. Look at that. It's right there. Okay, guys? So that's essentially what transactions is. So myASM, you can change the engine. myASM doesn't support transactions. InnoDB does. Foreign keys, all that stuff. So this is just like a little bit a demo showing you the difference between AnnoDB and MySQL, and just the idea of you can change the underlying database engine and do coolish stuff with it, guys. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this whole big videos about database engine. I'm gonna see you in the next one. Okay, what do you want to see next? Let me know, and we'll have discussion. Let's see what's your favorite database, guys. What do you like to use in your projects? Okay, you like MySQL because you can change the engine, or do you like the simplicity of just using Postgres and I don't really care? Let Postgres do the optimization for you. What do you like? Right? There is no wrong answers, guys. Right? And yeah, I'm gonna pick up one of those databases and start making videos about them. There is a lot of videos that I want to make, guys. Yeah, but I'm gonna keep making videos. Hope you enjoy the content. Let me know what you want to see next. I'm gonna see you in the next one. You guys stay awesome.